The past is very important to us. It is where we find the origins of our culture, as well as our own roots. There is a whole industry involved in finding out about the past. Bookshops are full of history books. Universities all have history departments. But we can never go back. We shall never know how the flowers smelt in the garden of Epicurus. Everything past is no more. It has fallen into the dark backward and abysm of time. How then do we know anything about it at all? How do we know whether a particular event has even happened? Philosopher Sophie Botros addresses these complex issues in her new book. As she considers these matters, she finds herself forced to wonder whether the past exists at all.
Once we begin to think about it, we may be struck by what a queer idea, this apparently ordinary idea of the past's existence actually is. It's an idea played on in Orwell's 1984, when O'Brien, an inner party member, tries to persuade the hapless everyman, Winston, that the past isn't set in stone, but is infinitely manipulable by present interests. O'Brien asks, "Do you really think there exists somewhere or other a place, a world of solid objects, where the past is still happening?" This disorienting feeling that the past may be a non-entity can even affect our sense of the present. Consider that eerie feeling, sometimes elicited by the sound of a ticking clock at the dead of night, that everything is in flux. A relentless succession of present moments, endlessly processing toward annihilation. In the first two parts of my book, I argue that the past, at least as an independent entity, does not exist, that there is only the present. To start, I will use a simple thought experiment. I call it the moving platform.
Imagine yourself sitting in a room when your friend enters from your left, passes in front of you, and ends up on your right. From a fixed position in space, it seems you can track her movement smoothly, continuously from left to right. It is possible to observe a moving object while not oneself being in motion. If we consider time, however, the situation is quite different. There is no analogous freedom in time to remain stationary yourself while your friend moves. The clock continues to tick for all of us. It is as if, when it comes to time, all observers are constrained to remain on a moving platform, which is the present, the now. There seems to be a discontinuity here that does not assail space.
You may object, but I can obviously remember how she looked just a moment ago, how she moved her arms and such like. But these are present memories, and however direct they may seem, are subject to time and change, just like any other evidence. They cannot assure us that past events have stayed unchanged while time flows on. Realists would anyway themselves object to this way of using memory to shore up the past. But they would say it gets things the wrong way round. For them, it is past events themselves, by their existence, that guarantees the genuineness of our memories, not vice versa.
Skeptics might, for the sake of argument, agree with us realists that, with a present tense statement such as "there is a violent rainstorm today," its truth conditions, the sheets of rain driving diagonally across the sky, the splashing and thudding of water drops in the bird bath, which for us the statement is about, which make it true, are just what we would point to if anyone asked for its meaning. But take the past tense statement, "there was a violent rainstorm yesterday." Here, skeptics will point out that it is the puddles lying in the street today, our memories today of yesterday's rainstorm, that we would recognise as supporting the truth of the statement. But realists will protest that they are merely evidence from which we infer yesterday's rainstorm. They are not what makes it true. That can only be yesterday's rainstorm. But yesterday's rainstorm is no longer there for us to point to. It cannot drench us. It has vanished forever.
In order to save the notions of truth and meaning, the skeptic demands that we take the puddles and the memories to be themselves what the statement is about, what makes it true, what gives it meaning. But we will be indignant. Skeptics have apparently robbed us of the dark whirling clouds, the raindrops falling in the bird bath, and substituted a pale concoction of present evidence. There is one last stand for realists. We can, they will insist, have a conception of truth conditions independently of any evidence we might have, or even if we have no direct contact with the conditions. The secret, they will say, lies in the truth-value link, a principle of enormous intuitive power that anyone will deny at their peril. Today, I'm making this video, and I know with absolute certainty that I was making this video a year ago today will be true in a year's time. It will be true whatever the conflicting evidence states then. It is just conceivable that, suppose some catastrophe, that all our memories have been wiped out, including my own, and that the video was destroyed on completion. The skeptics who are confined to evidence existing then will have, therefore, to deny this obvious truth. But the skeptic will reply that you have merely used a rule for the transformation of a present tense statement made now into a past tense statement envisaged as being made in the future. What makes you suppose that this gives you ingress into the past? What you're representing as the past isn't the past at all. It's the present. It's me making this video now. You can't assume that the transformation sanctioned by the truth-value link will hold in the future when we actually arrive there, and so give us access to a past such as it will reveal itself then. The debate is inconclusive. It depends on how we weigh the truth-value link against moving platform considerations, which, as we have seen, suggests very strongly that we cannot view other times from some timeless viewpoint other than the present. So we cannot vindicate the truth-value link claim that our true present tense statement may also serve as a true statement about the past when made in the future. In my view, the belief that the past has some independent existence must, in the end, be given up. You might find this a little frightening, but I hope that I've persuaded you that trying to keep it gives philosophers some problems. And in fact, getting rid of it solves some outstanding problems. So long as we believe in the past's existence, we are unable to resolve a paradox inherent in the almost banal idea of things persisting through change. Consider a green leaf turning brown in autumn. You will agree that it has to be the same leaf that was green that is now brown. If it was a different leaf, a brown leaf, it could not be said to have lost its greenness. But the great philosopher Leibniz stipulates, surely incontrovertibly, that a thing cannot be itself and yet have divergent properties. So it seems that the leaf must be the same leaf in order to lose its greenness. But in order to be the same leaf, it must retain its greenness, which is a paradox. Some people will say, well, this is just philosophers' problems. Of course, things persist within limits, depending on the kind of thing they are. But to this it will be replied, are you suggesting that it requires less than identity to persist? These are deep and difficult questions. All I will say here is that in my view, identity is an atemporal relation. It cannot accommodate the unidirectionality of time's arrow. After much argument, I conclude in my book that the paradox can only be resolved if the leaf's having been green is accorded less reality than the leaf's being green now. This leads me finally to demote the past and to conclude that only present things exist. But how does this help with the contradiction? On one version of presentism, presently existing entities, such as the leaf, are bearers of past tense properties, such as having been green, and present tense properties, such as being brown. The contradiction is apparently resolved because, for presentists, having been green is no more like being green than not being green. But this is difficult to comprehend. On another version of presentism, past times are thought of as existing in the present as stories. But this is metaphysically cumbersome. My proposal, which accords a crucial role to historians, affirms realism as regards presently existing objects, including historical texts, the tomes you see lying on bookshelves, but suspends it as regards the non-existent past, which is their subject matter. I'm influenced here by the celebrated philosophers of history, who are also historians in their own right, R.G. Collingwood and Michael Oakeshott, who, being idealists, thought of truth as a function of interpretation, not of what actually existed in the past.
A treatment of fictional truths may illuminate. For example, in answer to the question, how can the proposition Romeo loves Juliet be true, since neither person exists, it is plausibly replied, because it is actually about Shakespeare's play, and that does exist. This reply satisfies the realist demand for an existing truth-maker for the fictional statement, but refuses to follow realists in breaking down the statement into its component parts. Subject Romeo, object Juliet, relation loves. Seeking truth-makers for all of them would just be a misunderstanding of literary discourse.
This is analogous to how I approach a historical text. From one viewpoint, it can function as a truth maker, acceptable to presentists for the claims it contains. For example, Henry V was the victor of Agincourt is, in my view, about the historical text in which it figures. It would be a misunderstanding of historical discourse to insist on breaking this claim down and seeking truth makers for its component elements. Its content, I suggest, is governed by coherentist principles. When realists protest, Henry V was the victor at Agincourt is about a real historical personage in a real battle, and that history isn't fiction, or otherwise historians could make up whatever they liked. I reply, that is not so. Historians are held to extremely rigorous standards in interpreting their evidence. And in any case, how can it possibly help to refer to that shadowy realm that O'Brien mocked, and which no historian has ever been able to access in order to check a single of his conclusions? My proposal asks you to respect the text in and for itself, not to look through it. It asks you to assess the coherence of the interpretations, to observe how compendious descriptions such as the 100 Years' War anticipate their outcome, to note the narrative art that is used in shaping and pacing events, bringing to the past its depth and resonance. Historians, I suggest, by both their narrative techniques and their intellectual powers, play a crucial role in the creation and construction of the historical past, and perhaps the past more generally.